Hi, and welcome to the 401k Limits, Limitations, and Latent Liabilities presentation. What your HR department and investment advisors may not have told you about your qualified plan. It's brought to you by Money Navigation, and you can visit us on the web at www.fastequitysystem.com. My name is Rook Lachika, and I'll be the one walking you through the presentation today. So, what are we going to cover? Well, first and foremost, we're going to be going over the 2007 and 2008 maximum contribution limits for 401ks. Then we're going to move on to some areas regarding 401ks that a lot of plan participants are not aware of when it comes to their 401ks. And those are some of the inherent limitations and liabilities that you may face when you put money into your 401k. It's going to be quick, it's going to be fast-paced. This is primarily an overview presentation. My main goal is to bring to your attention some of the negative aspects involving 401ks. And the reason I want to do that is because I'm hoping to get you to think a layer deeper about your plan and how you approach your funding of it. Because the prevailing message in the media seems to be, hey, you got to fund your 401k to the absolute maximum allowed if you can, and if you don't, you're just crazy and irresponsible. But they constantly dole out this advice without ever discussing the potential downsides and some of the little surprises that are waiting for you. So I hope the presentation will get you thinking, but more importantly, I hope it helps you in starting to ask the right questions before you make a final decision about maxing out your contributions. Now keep in mind, I am not saying that 401ks are bad, but your 401k is a financial instrument, and every financial instrument has positives and negatives. But very few people seem to be discussing the negatives, and you can't do a good job of protecting yourself and optimizing the tool if you never are made aware of what the downsides might be. So if you think about it this way, if you were building a house, you'd be using a bunch of different tools to do it. And one of those tools, let's say, is a power saw. Now, this is a great tool and it can help you do a lot of things, but if you don't know the potential downsides of working with it, you could end up hurting yourself more than helping yourself. Well, the same thing applies to financial tools. The more you know, the better the results you can get. Which is why I want to help you identify a few areas that you may want to spend some time learning more about, either with your HR department or the investment counselor that they make available to you, or of course you can always contact our offices and we'd be happy to put you in touch with someone as well. So let's jump right into it. The 401k maximum contribution limits. The first thing you need to know is that you're actually going to be dealing with two different types of contribution limits. You have the limits imposed by the U.S. government via the IRS, and then you'll also have limits imposed by your employer. We're going to start with the IRS. So for 2007, the maximum contribution limit is $15,500. And if you're age 50 or older, there's another provision in the code referred to as the catch-up contribution. Simply put, the government realizes that a lot of Americans are behind schedule on their retirement nest egg building. So they recently enacted a provision in the Internal Revenue Code that allows individuals age 50 and over to make additional contributions above and beyond the standard contribution. And for 2007, that amount is $5,000. So if you qualify for the catch-up provision, you could put a grand total of $20,500 into your account. In 2008, we're going to see a slight bump in the standard maximum contribution limit. So you'll be able to put away $16,000. And as you'll notice here, the catch-up contribution for 2008 will be remaining at $5,000. We're not going to see a bump there. Okay. The next set of limits that you'll need to know about are those set by your employer. Obviously, I have no way of knowing what your employer limits are. So what I've done here is just given you an example of an employer contribution limit. And again, you'll need to check with your own HR department to find out exactly what your limits are. But one type of employer limit that you may see is a percentage of salary limit. So in this example, we're saying that the employer has imposed a 10% of salary limit. So an employee making $75,000 can only contribute a maximum of 10% of their salary, which is $7,500, which is less than half the limit set by the IRS. For high compensation employees, it would cut the other way. So in this next example, 10% of a $250,000 salaried employee would be $25,000, but the maximum that the IRS will allow, even if you include the catch-up provision, assuming you qualify for it, is $20,500. So essentially, whichever one is more restrictive is the one you're going to be stuck with. And that basically covers the maximum contribution limits. Just remember, you're going to want to check with your HR department first because they do tend to have the more restrictive of the two guidelines.